Hey everyone, Justin Crumley here with the CuJoProductions channel. Welcome to a new edition of CuJoProductions Top 10, where we go over anything and everything. Top 10, I rank them. And this one has been something I've been promising you guys for a long time. It's the top 10 weird and or creepy Michigan legends. And let me first apologize for this video, because I have been promising this one for I think a couple weeks now. I kept delaying it and I kept telling everybody it'd be up, it'd be up, it'd be up. Well, there's a lot going on and it's no excuse. I feel horrible about delaying this. I also feel bad that I wasn't able to get a creepypasta reading up this month. I will make up for that on Friday. Promise. I promise there will be a creepypasta on Friday. So, yeah, I'd just like to get that out of the way. I'm really sorry about, delaying this video for as long as I have, but nonetheless, here it is. Let's get into it. This is the top 10 weird and or creepy Michigan legends. Let's begin. Number 10 is the Monguagon Ghost. I apologize if I botched that. Anyway, in Trenton, near the corner of West Jefferson and Slocum, stands a historical marker that claims to be near the lost Indian village of Monguagon. Again, apologize if I botched that really badly. This is where America's only Michigan victory in the War of 1812 was won. What the marker doesn't tell is that one of the young British soldiers who took a bullet to his temple managed to come back from the dead, for a few minutes anyway. On August 9th, the night the young officer named Muir was killed, an apparition, all sweaty and bloody from battle showed up in the boudoir of his sweetheart, Marie. Muir's ghost told Marie that his inner body lay in a thicket and begged her to bury it before it could be found and mutilated by one party or another. Before he left, he touched her hand with his cold, lifeless fingers. When Marie awoke the next morning, she thought she had been dreaming, until she looked at her hand. There, pressed deep in her fair skin, was a strange dark mark where Muir's shade had touched her. She was stricken with guilt because she had flirtatiously pretended to spurn him the last time they were together. Deciding she must right her wrong, she hightailed it to the battle site with a servant and was somehow able to find her lover's body and make sure that it was properly buried. It was said that from then on, she always wore a black glove on her hand to cover the ghost mark. The legend continued to grow because every year, on the anniversary of Muir's death, Marie would put on a coarse, hooded beggar's robe and wander from house to house, asking for money to feed the poor. Some say she steals through the streets of Trenton to this day, every August 9th, in her dark cloak, stretching forth her black-gloved hand and begging for alms to salve her eternally torn conscience. So, yeah, a ghost that begs for money. Basically, a female Robin Hood. Only a ghost. That's awesome. Number 9, Leelanau Rouge, otherwise known as that cursed red dwarf. Leelanau Rouge is the name of a little red-faced demon that apparently will show up in the sight of some bad luck. Basically, this thing is like Mothman or a black cat. This legend first came about when Cadillac, the founder of Detroit, Antoine de la Motte Cadillac is his full name for the record, went to a gypsy and she said that she'd run into this thing. Now, he laughed it off and didn't believe it. One night, while him and his wife were out walking, they came across something that was described as Leelanau Rouge, and instead of praising it or complimenting it, he hit it with a cane. What followed was a whole bunch of disasters. For example, he was arrested in Montreal for some suspicious trading, And eventually he went to France, where he died. His fortune all lost and basically forgotten. I bet a lot of people probably didn't know that Cadillac was actually the founder of Detroit. So yeah, if you ever see this thing in your path, just compliment it and hope that your life doesn't suck afterwards. I don't ever want to see this thing in my path, that's for sure. Sign me up for the Black Cat. Number 8 is the Legend of the Petosky Stones. A quick glance at a Petosky stone is all it takes to see that this is no ordinary rock. The stones appear to be covered with hundreds of tiny radiating suns, or holes. They look like a beehive. Do the circular designs on Michigan State rock represent the ancient symbol of the mystical third eye, as some New Agers claim? Of course, most geologists would call the markings a happy accident of nature. But there's actually more to it than just that. The stones are actually a type of fossilized coral. They're named Hexagonaria ursarinata. Hard to pronounce, I apologize. Because the outer edges of the suns, or eyes, are six-sided in shape. The particular type of Hexagonaria, I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced, called the Petosky stone, however, is found only in northern Michigan. The coral lived during the Devonian period, 350 million years ago, where Michigan's landmass was located much farther south and was, get ready, mostly covered with tropical sea. Wrap your head around that. The coral remains received the name Petosky much more recently. Legend has it that in the 1700s, a French nobleman traveled to the New World to dabble in the fur trade. Antoine Carr did far more than dabble, however. He married an Ottawa chieftain's daughter and eventually became a chieftain himself. His Ottawa name was Nitushing. In 1787, the story goes, Nitushing decided to winter with his family in the northern Illinois. As the temperatures warmed, with the return of spring, they headed northeast to Kalamazoo's River area, where Nitushing's wife bore him a son. As they admired the infant, the morning sun shone on the baby's face, inspiring them to name the child Petosky, which meant rising sun or sunbeams of promise. The child grew to be a handsome, shrewd businessman. He married another Ottawa chieftain's daughter and raised his own large family. Talk about following in your dad's footsteps. Petosky owned much land, including a field where the city of Petosky now stands. The settlers who built the first buildings there decided to name it after the French Ottawa chieftain, spelling his name as Petosky. This also happened to be precisely where the lion's share of the ancient coral fossils had been found. Could it be more coincidence that the only place in the world where the sun-patterned stones were found turned out to be the namesake of the young child named after the rays of the sun? I don't know. Could just be a coincidence. All I know is, if you ever find one of these stones anywhere in Michigan, keep it. It's like a treasure. Number 7, Big Louie, giant of the Keweenaw. He was a miner, a sideshow giant, a bartender, and an elected justice of peace during his relatively short life. Whatever his occupation, at any given time, gentle Louie Moylanen was always guaranteed to be the tallest person in the room. The Ringling Brothers Circus billed him as the tallest man on earth. But at 8 feet 4, Louie probably fell a few inches short of that honor. Still, he was probably very tired of being asked about the quantity of the air up there. Born in 1885, Louie immigrated from Finland at the age of 4. His family made their home in Salo, a town later destroyed by fire, a tiny Finnish community on the Keweenaw Peninsula, where the Great Lakes air evidently agreed with the growing boy. At the age of 18, he already stood 8'1". People were doubly shocked at his height, because his mother measured barely a few inches over 4 feet tall, and his father was considered of average height. I'm 5'6", so this guy would easily hover me. His family farm was close to the Franklin copper mine, where Louie proved his worth by his ability to shoulder the same timber load as 6 normal-sized men. But the mines weren't designed to accommodate giants, so Louie found himself an easier job with Wrigley Brothers, which is a circus if you don't know. By then he stood 8'4", weighed 450 pounds, and wore a size 19 shoe. The circus billed him as Big Louie, the copper country giant. He lasted only 2 years though, finally becoming tired of people staring at him and homesick for his home of Keweenaw. Back in Michigan, Louie became a popular bartender in Hancock. According to historian Wilbert Mackey, in a 2001 issue of Michigan History magazine, his arms were so long he could simultaneously hand beers to customers at each end of the bar. He eventually became so well known that the town elected him Justice of the Peace. Unfortunately, like many people of his time, Louie came down with tuberculosis and died at the young age of 28. His custom casket, which measured almost 9 feet in length and weighed 300 pounds, had to be taken to Wassa Cemetery near Hancock on a flat wagon rather than the customary hearse. But Louie wasn't allowed to rest easy in his grave. After his burial, rumors flew that grave robbers had stolen his body for his giant skeleton. The grave was duly excavated to prove that Louie was still down there. A museum in Calumet still displays one of his massive suits, and the little Upper Peninsula town of Boston, near the lost village of Salo, now claims to be the hometown of Big Louie. Number 6, the Dog Lady Island legend. The Dog Lady Island legend goes as follows. Just south of Monroe in Macomb County, the Plum Creek reveals an overgrown little island boasting little rusted-out school bus in the ruins of an old mansion. The 8-acre slip of land has been called Dog Lady Island since the 1960s, when teenagers began to party there, but sometimes a pair of deep-set eyes would peer from the bushes at them. Occasionally, they glimpsed the old woman the eyes belonged to, in rags and accompanied by a snarling hound. They called her the Dog Lady. Could she be a precursor to the Dog Man? Or is she related to the Dog Man? Who knows? Anyway, she lived alone in the shack, they said, and crawled on all fours. Some swore she growled and licked her chops until she lost her tongue. Seems one of her dogs chewed it out of her mouth over a morsel of raccoon. The island had been purchased in the late 1800s by a family who took over the large home built as part of a woman's religious school. Sometime in the 1930s, a couple was hired to watch the mansion, which burnt to the ground in 1961. The husband soon died, leaving his elderly wife with their dogs. While there is no evidence that the lady went feral, a rumor that she slept in a coffin left by the Iron Coffin motorcycle gang in the 70s might be true, although it's doubtful any teens were caught, tortured, and murdered by the gang as alleged. But some teens claimed she leapt from the roofs of their cars to scratch the windows with her claws, spittle flying from her curled lips. Developers tried unsuccessfully to rezone the island for entertainment purposes, naming it first Utopia and then Croquis. Now the true fate of the Dog Lady is unknown, but many have claimed to still feel her watchful presence on Dunbar Road, near the Old Island Causeway, and hear eerie howling from the desolate island when the moon is full. Number 5, Jimmy Hoffa. Okay, everyone knows who Jimmy Hoffa was. In case you don't, here's the story. He was a Detroit Teamsters Union president who was most famous for suddenly disappearing on July 30th, 1975. What most people don't know, however, is that Hoffa's middle name was Riddle, a moniker that nearly sums up what Hoffa's death would become. Hoffa, a freight handler from Brazil, Indiana, worked his way up to the Teamsters ladder after precautiously leading a grocery store strike at the age of 17. The 5'5" Hoffa made some unfortunate enemies, however, including U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, whose investigations eventually landed Hoffa in the slammer. After his parole, Otto returned to his quiet family life and was last seen in the parking lot of a restaurant just outside of Detroit in Bloomfield Township, after having announced his intentions to run for a Teamsters office again. So where is he buried? Well, no one knows. There's actually a really disgusting rumor that he's somewhere in Giant Stadium. So, yeah, just imagine that for a second. Never know, maybe Odell Beckham Jr. made that awesome catch on top of Jimmy Hoffa's body. That's a disturbing thought. Number 4, Harry Houdini's Halloween death. We all know who Harry Houdini is. I don't really need to get into that. But did you know that he actually died in Detroit on Halloween in 1926 to be exact? Now, Houdini had often boasted that he was in such perfect shape he could take any sort of blow to his middle. In 1926, in Montreal, Canada, a college student tested this claim, but caught the magician off guard, landing 4 hard punches to his abdomen. Houdini was injured, but the consummate trooper managed to finish his Montreal tour. He then traveled to Detroit, where his wife, Bess, was waiting anxiously with a doctor. Houdini still insisted on making one more appearance at Garrick Theater, so his last performance was in Detroit. Unfortunately, by then, it was too late for a physician's care to help him. His appendix had ruptured from the violent blows dealt to him by the college student, and Houdini died at 1:26 p.m. Number 3, the Michigan Triangle. Now I could sum this up pretty simple. You ever hear of the Bermuda Triangle? This is kind of the same thing. Basically, if you swim through here on a boat or raft through it on a ship or go through it on a plane, you might not come back, or things are just going to get a little crazy. There's been instances where it seems like time slows down or it speeds up. Like I said, a lot of weird things happen, and some disappearances. Most notably is the well-documented case is the disappearance of Captain George R. Donner of the lake fighter O.M. McFarland. From his cabin while the ship was underway on April 28, 1937, the McFarland had picked up 9,800 tons of coal in Erie, Pennsylvania, and then headed west through the lakes, bound for Port Washington in Wisconsin. Because it was early in the season, the lakes and the locks in the upper part of the Great Lakes were still choked with ice, which slowed the McFarland's progress. Donner had remained on the bridge many hours, guiding his ship through the treacherous ice floes. When at last the vessel turned into Lake Michigan, the exhausted captain retired to his cabin, with instructions that he be called when the ship neared Port Washington. Some 3 hours later, as the McFarland neared her destination, the second mate went to the captain's cabin to wake him up, but the captain wasn't there. After an extensive search through the whole ship, the crew had discovered the captain had mysteriously disappeared. Like I said, a lot of weird shit happens. Number 2, the Lake Leelanau Monster. The story of an early 20th century sea monster sighting was sent to the Shadowlands website by a reader whose great-grandfather was the witness. The boy was fishing for perch one day in 1910 in the shallows of Lake Leelanau in Leelanau County. The lake had been dammed in the late 1800s to provide water power to the local mill. The dam flooded much of the surrounding area, turning it into swamps and bogs punctuated by dead, standing trees. On that particular day, the boy, William Gauthier, rode out to a new fishing spot near the town of Lake Leelanau. Looking for a good perch habitat, he paddled up close to a tree that he estimated to stand about 5 feet above the water and 6-inch trunk. Gauthier was in about 7 feet of water at this point and decided this would be a good place to cast a line. He stopped and began tying the boat to the tree. That's when young William discovered that the tree had eyes. They were staring him dead in the face at about 4 feet above water level. The boy and serpent exchanged a long gaze. Then the creature went poof into the water. Gauthier said later that the creature's head passed one end of the boat, while the tail was still at the other end. Though it was undulating very quick through the water. The writer noted that Gauthier always admitted to having been thoroughly frightened by his encounter, and that the event caused him to stay off the lake for many years. Can't blame him. The young Gauthier came from a prominent area of family and was very well educated. After the incident, he said that he knew others who would admit privately, but not publicly, that they too had seen the creature. No sightings have been reported in recent times, but who knows how many people have believed that they were passing by a rotting old cedar when in fact they had just gazed the Lake Leelanau monster. Just imagine that. You're trying to fish, you tie your boat to what you think is a branch, and it turns out to be the long-lost cousin of the Loch Ness monster. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever go in water again. And number 1, the Michigan Dogman. Of course, Michigan Dogman's number 1. It's arguably the most famous cryptid in Michigan. Now, something I haven't mentioned is Michigan's actually known for Bigfoot sightings, but the Michigan Dogman, yeah, that's a legend in the state of Michigan. This thing was usually just a folklore until 1987, when a man named Steve Cook, who was also a DJ and was also known as Bob Farley, wrote a song called The Legend, which included lyrics that told of encounters with the Dogman. The Dogman is pretty self-explanatory. It's half dog, half man. It's gnarly looking. It's scary as hell. I mean, just look at the thing. It looks like somebody wearing a werewolf head. It's pretty freaky looking. This thing is celebrated. A lot of people like to write songs about it. There was even a staged wolf hunt from Ron Bailey, who was a DJ in Grand Rapids, in 1992 for the Dogman. And as you can see by the imagery, this thing, as I said, freaky as hell. Easily the most famous legend / weird story from Michigan, and especially up north. If you go up north where all the woods are, that's when this thing is really going to be talked about. Honestly, I can't do it justice. You got to look this thing up. It's really cool, especially if you're into cryptids like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra. Yeah, put the Dogman in there with. Well guys, that's it for this list. I hope you found it informative. It was quite a lot of work putting this together. I'm not kidding, you'd be surprised. Again, I'd like to apologize for this video being delayed so many different times. I've been really busy, but it's up here, it's here. Watch it, love it, hit the like button. Alright guys, this Friday look out for another creepypasta. I promise this time it will be up by Friday. You have my word, and my word is my bond. Have a great day. If you're not having a great day, I hope it gets better. Until next time, I'm Dustin Crumley, and this is CuJoProductions, signing out.